Kia ora, everyone. Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Robin Subramaniam. I'm the Dean of the Otago Medical School, and it's a warm welcome to this first session on digital health programs and digital health. I'm delighted Chris is here, and I also want to thank Robin. About 2 years ago when I came, this was one of the first things we talked about, how to recruit someone and develop a digital health program here in Dunedin and Focus. And then when Chris came and we developed this idea, due to COVID, we just had to wait until now. I hope this is the beginning of great things to come. And I have no doubt in my mind, this will create a niche here in Dunedin and it's a junction between the health system, the government, as well as the university, and will produce a group of next generation leaders that would contribute to the New Zealand's future health, which will be one of the cornerstones would be the digital health. With that, and I want to thank once again, Robin, as well as Chris for coming and taking this role. And I wish all the very best for the next year's program and growth of this. And I would look forward to seeing that. Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Okay. So thanks, Rathan. Hope everyone can hear. And we've got a Zoom link. So we're trying to be technological with this, and that usually fails. But if you can post on the chat or just, unmute yourself and start shouting at us if things are not working properly. We've got a camera pointing at the speaker, but we also have another camera that points at the audience. So when we go on to discussion, hopefully people zooming in can see the people in the audience. And we do have a roving mic, but that doesn't seem to be working. So I'll probably just repeat questions from the audience so that people on Zoom, and if I forget to do that, again, unmute and start shouting. Okay, so the purpose of this meeting is really just to try and, it's kind of after a discussion I had with Rathan, we should try and bring out anybody who's interested in digital health at the university or in Dunedin in the hospital, working in the kind of local sector. And the university is the kind of wider university, so people on all the campuses. And what we want to do is have a few meetings like this, kind of get-togethers. And we were hoping we were going to be able to have kind of drinks and nibbles and kind of real networking, but we're not allowed to do that just yet. But hopefully next year we'll be able to start doing that kind of thing. But really the idea was to try and bring out people just to say 10 minutes, who they are and what they're interested in digital health is. And so that everyone can get to know each other across the kind of space. And we can think about all the exciting things we can do together, whether it's collaborations on research projects or if there's anything else that people want to talk about and discuss. So it's kind of a bit like a kind of a club or something like that, where it's just a kind of informal thing for people to get to know each other. And we've got a few presentations today. So I'm going to talk just a bit about the digital health program that we've got starting up. And we're going to have Tanya is going to talk about her research projects in digital health ethics. Lance, I'm not sure if Lance is here yet. No, hopefully Lance, if he comes, he'll be talking about the digital health projects at the Dunedin Hospital. Ruth Large is going to dial in via Zoom. I hope Ruth is online. Have you seen Ruth online there, Tanya? So Tanya's helping out, thanks. So hopefully she'll be able to deliver her presentation, which we'll be able to watch remotely. And we did also have Nathan, who's going to talk about the eHealth Forum, but he's an anaesthetist, he's stuck in a complicated operation at the moment. So we're not sure whether he's going to be able to make it. But if he doesn't, I will demonstrate his slides for him and show you what the eHealth Forum is if you haven't signed up to it already. Okay, so I'll give myself 10 minutes and try and be strict, because I said I'd be strict with other people, and talk a bit about the digital health programme. That's not moving forward. There we go. This is me. So I've met quite a few people in the room, but I suspect on Zoom, quite a few people haven't met. And if you're watching the recording, we might not have met. So I'm Chris Payton. I was a member of this university quite a long time ago, probably 15 years ago, and I was a junior lecturer in health informatics. And then I worked at Auckland for a little bit for the National Institute for Health Innovation as a research fellow. Then I went back to the UK, and I spent the last 7 or 8 years in the UK working at the University of Oxford. And then I couldn't wait to come back to New Zealand, so I came back and rejoined the University of Otago as a senior lecturer. And I've also, this is a part-time role, and I've also staying part-time with the University of Oxford. And I'll just mention my couple of research projects that I do. So this one is a decision support tool that we're developing, and it's designed to help clinicians in Africa to diagnose pneumonia or differentiate between severe and non-severe pneumonia in children using smartphones instead of pulse oximeters. So we've got some clever scientists at the Department of Engineering Science in Oxford who've developed machine learning algorithms for detecting heart rate and respiratory rate from smartphone video, which is the same as you get on pulse oximeter. We've also got a project in Vietnam where we're supporting ICU care. And again, this is a kind of machine learning AI project, which is a big collaboration. But the basic idea really is to try and use low-cost technology like smartphones that can monitor your oxygen sensors and things, instead of these really expensive ICU monitoring equipment. So they have lots of ICUs across Southeast Asia, but quite often they don't have any monitoring equipment. So we're seeing whether we can use low-cost technologies to do that using clever technologies. And then finally, another project I'm doing is a VR project. I started calling it the metaverse, but I think that's not really very appreciated by most people. But it basically, you go into use a virtual reality headset and you go into a 3D hospital and you can learn how to do manage emergencies, and we have a smartphone app as well. But this one of the benefits of this is that if you've got a headset, you can communicate over the internet with someone else who's another avatar in another place. So those are kind of my main projects at the moment. And then the other bit is running the digital health program. So if you haven't heard about the digital health program, we're trying to advertise it at the moment. It's been running this year, setting it up. So we've run Digital Health 701 and 703 this year, but those two together will make up a PG cert, and then there'll be a PG dip, which is those two papers plus another of three or four other papers. It's run, this is semester one next year will be 701 and 703 running together. And then the PG dip will be the second semester to complete the PG dip, where you can take additional papers, research methods, and a combination of other papers. We teach the course fully online, so people can do it from anywhere. So this year we had people dialing in from all over the country, and we want to get international students as well. So we'll have people coming in from abroad next year. The idea is that people work together online as collaboratively as possible, and that's been really successful. I think we've got little groups of people together and they're doing their own work, and it's worked really nicely using Teams. We bring in a lot of guest lecturers, so some of the people in this room are guest lecturers, but also experts from industry, so people who started digital health companies, or people from the Ministry of Health have been kind enough to come and teach us. So this is an example timetable from 701 that we ran this year. So these are our kind of the topics that we're covering and some of the guest lecturers that we've had. So we talk about what digital health is, health information standards. Tanya teaches a module on ethics and security and privacy. We also have Shane Hunter come in and talk about the New Zealand health IT projects. And Nigel talks about the digital transformation projects that he's been doing. And we also have lots of discussion about how to make digital health systems clinically usable, how to co-design them with clinicians and make them successful when you're implementing them. And yeah, we're trying to bring in people from the kind of commercial sector as well as the Ministry of Health and the kind of research side of things, so that people can kind of understand what the real world is like in terms of digital health and how challenging it can be to get projects up and running and working. Okay, so probably that's good enough for me. If you want to email me about the course, you can do that on my email address that's up there. Or if there's anything about this group, if you know people who'd like to join this group, then send them my email address and we'll add them onto the list. And we'll probably have another event like this in a couple of months' time in the new year. And if you want to learn more about the course, then you can go to this digital health. If you just add digital health on the end of the Otago website, then you get to the course information pages. Okay, what I thought we'd do is just take one or two quick clarifying questions for each kind of presentation. So if there's any quick questions, otherwise we can have a discussion about various things at the end. So anybody got any questions? Super. Anything in the chat, Tanya? Okay, super. Oh, yeah.
I sort of know the answer to this, but just for the audience, I guess, who are the competitors, you know, globally in terms of the digital health offering we have here at Otago? And how is ours different?
So digital health, so there's a lot of digital health courses now. Most of them are master's courses, so ours is different in that respect, in that it's a postgraduate diploma course. So if you look internationally, most courses are masters of digital health. That's not to say that you can't go on to do a master's after you've done a PGDIP. So you could have the same offering in that regard. Auckland have just kind of rebranded their health informatics course as digital health. And previously that was a taught face-to-face course. And ours was kind of differentiated as being online, but their new course is online as well. And there are a few online courses, but I would say that most of the high quality courses are face-to-face teaching. So there's a few kind of groups that have been teaching digital health for a long time, especially in the US. Places like Harvard and OHSU are quite big names in health informatics or digital health, and they teach face-to-face courses. So I think there is a really good opportunity internationally for a fully online course, and this year we've had quite a lot of international students applying, so I think that's quite a nice differentiator. Yep.
Who are you trying to attract, and what are your prerequisites?
So I'll just repeat that question because I forgot to repeat Robin's question, but who are we trying to attract, and what are their prerequisites? So the idea, and this is a bit of a challenge, the idea is that you can come from either an IT type background or you can come from a healthcare background, and those are the kind of prerequisites, and you have to have an undergraduate degree to come and join the course. So we've had a mix of IT and clinicians and just people who work in healthcare or people who are already working in digital health as well. So that's a kind of reasonable background as well. Okay, so shall I stop there because I'm supposed to be chairing, and I'll hand over to, are you before Ruth or after Ruth?
I think after.
Okay, should we see if Ruth's online, because I don't think we have Lance. Is Ruth online? No, okay, I'll hand over to Tanya then.
Thank you.
No worries.
Should I open this one?
Just do that. Yeah, you can just shut that.
Should do it. Okay. Hi everyone. Kia ora koutou. I'm Tanya Morenhout. From my name, you probably know that I'm not a native Kiwi. I moved here from Belgium about a year ago, a little over a year ago. And what I'll do today is just give a brief introduction of the research I've been working on. And as you will see, there are a couple of like collaboration opportunities, I guess. So I'm also reaching out to people working in the field who think, well, that's something that I would want to collaborate on or work on, or we share similar interests, or just a coffee or a tea would be great as well. So as a brief overview of who I am and what I do. So initially I started as a general practitioner, so clinical work. I kept on doing that, but I developed an interest in philosophy and ethics. So I went on to do a master's and then a PhD, because that is how life goes, I guess. And here in Dunedin, I still work 2 days a week in the clinic. And so I'm also a philosopher / ethicist, I guess, and I'm lecturing at the Bioethics Center. And in my research, I have a strong focus on the ethics of new and emerging health technology. And when you talk about ethical considerations in digital health, then the first thing people often think about is privacy and security issues. I don't think that's not interesting. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that field, but I do find it quite a narrow focus, and I'm very interested in everything that happens sort of outside of what you see here as well, and that may be a little bit ignored in research and the literature at times. One example of that is, I think, very timely and relevant as well. This is one example of what I sometimes call the hidden morality of technology. You could find this on the BBC News just 2 days ago, that there will be an inquiry into potential racial bias in pulse oximeters. So they seem to be a little less accurate on dark skin, black skin than they are on white skin. And so one of my research interests is to look into how that happens, what happens in design that you end up with a product that may bias or have a bias basically against a particular skin color. As you can imagine, very complex issues. And so I only have 10 minutes, so I thought let's just focus on the 3 areas that I'm mainly interested in right now. And I've added one dream, or maybe $1 million question if you want, that I'll refer to in the end. So electronic health records, remote monitoring technology in older adults care, and then an ethical framework for virtual consultations is what I would like to talk about very briefly. So electronic health records, that was the focus of my PhD research, and I'm still quite interested in how electronic health records sit mainly in the patient-doctor relationship and in that sort of micro level of care. So strong focus on that patient-doctor relationship. And the reason I started this research was actually a patient of mine who came with a very specific question one day and said she's had a history of alcohol addiction. And she said, it's been 5 years now that I've been sober, and I actually don't want this in my record clearly visible. So to avoid that, when I see a new doctor and they've been reading up on my record, they start with sort of already a judgment over me. They see me as an addict or an ex-addict, if you want. And I want to be able to bring that into the conversation if I think it's relevant and when I think I'm ready for it. That was an interesting question that got me thinking. And as you can see, all of these themes are not really focused on the classic privacy and security issues, but I think still very important, and especially to clinicians in their daily practice and to patients who use these systems, and that's basically all of us. So it was mainly qualitative research, but I've also done a little bit of quantitative research in there as well. I'm going to go to the next one. So this is the second one, remote monitoring technology in older adults care. I wrote this blog post while I was in managed isolation, while I had just arrived in New Zealand, and I was still processing what I had seen in that first wave of the pandemic in Belgium. It was quite harsh, and as you probably realize, a lot of people in nursing homes have died in the process, especially in that first wave. I was confronted with that. And that led to thinking about how we care for older people. And so this started with a blog post and ended with me sort of focusing on what values are important here. So I'm not only looking at remote monitoring technology, but also at what is happening right now in nursing or rest home care. And we basically see somewhat of a slow but gradual paradigm shift happening from mainly or predominantly institutional values, as I would like to call them, a focus on safety, keeping that patient safe, avoiding that they fall, beneficence, and also medicalization. It looks a bit like a hospital, you know, the institutional nursing home. And we see that there is this transition to what you could call transformative values. So values of autonomy, a sort of more like a home-like feeling, I guess. It's hard to explain. Person-directed care, so where there's a lot more self-determination for people living in a rest home, and a much more privacy-sensitive design. So away from that sort of institutional thinking towards a more personalized form of care. And if you see the shift and transfer it to the values we see in remote monitoring technology, well, then there's still a strong focus there on security and safety and medicalization. If you look at the P analyzers, for example, or all the monitoring systems, video monitoring, and the mattresses and the floor sensors and whatnot is very, very much focused on safety. But at the same time, we also try to accommodate people so they can stay longer in their own home, which is nice. And it's very person-centered as well. So basically trying to analyze what is going on here. What are we trying to do with these remote monitoring technologies? And what values are underneath? And think about it before we implement them and then go, oh, this or that went wrong. So sort of trying to be in there from the design phase already. And then the last one is I would like to develop an ethical framework for virtual consultations. So obviously, you're probably all familiar with virtual consultations, whether it be via telephone or video consultations. And COVID-19, again, the pandemic has increased the number of these remote consultations. But there is a difference between crisis care and usual care, obviously. You know, in a pandemic, you may have no choice but to use virtual consultations. But in other circumstances, we really need to think about how we want to implement this. And I've just made a non-exhaustive list here on the screen with a number of patient groups where I can imagine they may have specific needs when it comes to virtual consultations. And so the main question here is, how do we set up a virtual consultation system that is inclusive and that is morally sound? And you may think, no, we're all using them, telephone and video consultations, but we still need to think quite hard about this question. And so ethical questions on the other side, equity, continuity of care, the burden of complex care, because some people will need to come into the office anyway, and the quality of care, because you often hear, especially with COVID, it's better than nothing, but in usual care, I hope we're expecting a little bit more than that. This is the last one. I hope I'm still on time. Perfect. So my $1 million question probably is focused on how can we change this and how can we create a sort of design phase that may anticipate things like hidden morality and ethical debt a bit better. And we already have a number of frameworks to incorporate ethics into design. You may all be familiar with the terms value-sensitive design and ethical technology assessment or ethical constructive technology assessment. But the question still is, how do we actually do this in, let's say, our day-to-day practice when it comes to developing technology? And you see the arrows. I think the current situation is still that tech developers and ethicists and philosophers sort of live in two different worlds. Tech developers want to go fast and they want to get things moving, and they're a bit wary of these ethicists asking difficult questions. And on the other hand, you've got ethicists and philosophers who are a bit wary of engaging with tech developers because, you know, are they really going to listen, and are we really going to have a collaboration here? But I do think that collaboration is going to be necessary in the future. And this is why the program is hopefully also contributing to that development of a stronger collaboration. And there's probably heaps and heaps of challenges that come with it, but I thought let's just throw it in here. And so that was my million-dollar question to end with. Thank you. This is my profile at the Bioethics Center. If you use that QR code, you've got that ready for you. I hope it also works on Zoom, but it should. And any questions, welcome to try to answer them.
Yeah, cool. Thanks very much, Tanya. Yeah, just anyone's got any questions, I'll monitor the Zoom chat and see if there's any questions in there. Anyone here got any questions for Tanya?
I guess it was more of a comment. I mean, got me thinking about the mind
Can I ask the question, please, Chris?
Yeah,
I'll repeat it.
There's
Yeah,
just-
I'll try
Okay.
to summarize it.
I'll want to ask a question afterwards. I think it's,
Oh, I thought you said you didn't hear the question.
No, I just wanted to ask a question. Thank you. So, Tanya, very interesting.
Wait, Holger, we've got a question from the audience, but you were
sorry.
not hearing it, I think. Go ahead, Tim.
mine was a comment. So I'm interested in evaluating effectiveness of interventions. So what I'm saying is it got me thinking about what outcomes are important. And therefore whether we should be thinking about looking at some of the areas which is great in
Right.
evaluation.
Yeah.
That's the discussion that was on the
Okay, just a quick summary for the Zoom. So Tim was mentioning that he's sort of focused on effectiveness and trying to evaluate technologies in that sense, and that he's interested now in incorporating these ethical outcomes maybe as well. Is that how I can summarize it?
Yes, and I think also that we need to be critical of technology that they can harm as well as benefit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the potential of harm as well as benefit. And I think that's always there. So I think it's important as sort of an ethical critical stance is not there to sort of stop the technology from happening, but rather to try to adjust it so that you can avoid risk and harm and still reap the benefits of it. Holger?
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. So actually, I'm asking about your last aspect about your big dream a question. So because I'm trying now for 2 years now to find a PhD student for a funded scholarship, working on a topic on pervasive augmented reality and ethics. So I really I'm looking for a person who has both of those qualities of the tech developer and the philosopher or ethicist. So would you have an example actually where that worked already successfully, where we had those two groups working together on one particular topic? Yeah, that is my question.
Yeah, so there's some literature on it, but I always feel like it's sort of more to the theoretical side, if I can say that. That there's like checklists and there's articles on how to avoid the checklists and go away from checklists and make it a bit more in-depth. I think one group that shows that they're working with developers and philosophers in the same space is at the University of Twente in the Netherlands with Peter Paul Verbeek is one of the philosophers of technology there. And I'm not sure if they've actually come out with a description of a project of how they've done it, but that is also what I'm interested in. So I'm actually in the next couple of months, I will probably be looking at, okay, who has done this besides sort of a more, I guess, theoretical development of how we could do this. Has anyone done it properly? And not just the ethicists that sort of are now employed by Silicon Valley, in these stories, but actual projects like the one you describe that make it work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just offer a comment on that? I think Toby Walsh at the NSW
Okay.
visited Holger will know. I think he's just got a book out on this topic.
I still need to say that. Toby Walsh?
Toby Walsh.
Toby Walsh.
Yep.
Put a book out,
Maybe
okay.
it's come out this week.
I will look it up.
Very good. Okay. Thank you very much, Tanya. Okay, so now we're going to try something a bit technological, and we're going to try and bring Ruth in remotely. Thanks for that. So let me stop sharing here, and I think Ruth is online. Are you there, Ruth? Can you?
I am here. Look, there I am.
It's worked.
Oh, tēnā koutou katoa.
Okay, everyone can see Ruth. That's great. Okay, so you should be able to share slides.
Yep.
If you want.
I'm going to introduce you to my fifth year medical student here as well, Talita, who I've introduced her about 10 different, using 10 different names today, which of course all medical students should have at least 10 names. So I think I may have finally got it right by the end of today. The poor woman's had a bit of a crash course today in telehealth and whakarangaro. We're doing all right, though. Yeah, she's doing all right. So there we go. Well, I thank you very much. I will just pop up a. Oh, where are we? Where's your little space? Oh, it's a good job you're here. Hey, this is why you have students, because they're amazing at showing you how to work your tech. Right, you guys all got that? My little screen?
Yes, we got that.
Awesome. Love it. Okay, so I thought I'm just going to go through stuff really quickly. And I will say that at the moment we're sort of feel as if we're running very fast here in Whakarangaro, so which is Healthline, COVID Healthline. So as you're probably aware, we got gifted on Labour Day the looking after people who are COVID positive in the community, and it's been a little bit of an epic journey. So this little slideshow doesn't actually have any of those bits in it because it's all new. But anyway, I'm just going to share a bit of a future of telehealth as a personal experience. So I'm the chair of the New Zealand Telehealth Forum, and I'm the Chief Clinical Officer for Whakarangaro Aotearoa, which runs a variety of different health lines. And hopefully my slides are going to change. But a couple of decades ago, this was me. I was actually thinking I'd just done my surgical part ones, and I took a little bit of time to go and spend in northwest Queensland. And this is where I landed in Dormagee, as many of us do when they were young health officers. I took my baby and my husband, because again, that's what you do. And I had an interesting life experience there. My slides are actually going to not be in very good order, but anyway, we won't worry about that too much. I had a small child come in about the same size as my one, this one here, in case you can't tell, that was definitely my one, into the emergency department, and very rapidly deteriorated into respiratory distress and then into a respiratory arrest. And a pretty frightening life event for both myself and the GP, but never mind the rest of the family, who of course were distraught. And the nearest thing we had was the telephone. And I found out that RFDS and our roads were closed. Nobody could get to us, and this child rapidly expired under our care. And it was a life-changing event for me, because not only did I decide I wasn't going to be a surgeon anymore, that I was going to go into emergency medicine, but also I developed an interest in telehealth. So once I'd actually got my fellowship, there was this. Other interesting things happen. So with the Ministry of Health, we're running this better, sooner, more convenient healthcare in the community, which many of us can remember, I'm sure. And at the same time, there was a telehealth symposium, or a call to arms, which kicked off what is now known as the New Zealand Telehealth Forum. And so we continue to be sponsored by the ministry, and we've really developed into a group that is playing a bit more of a role for consumers at the moment, but it was developed more to support our peers in clinical medicine to deliver telehealth to communities that may not otherwise get good healthcare. So the whole auspices of this was really about access to healthcare. And when we use that term telehealth, I'm probably preaching to the converted, I know, but we're really talking about the telehealth and all of its true forms, which is in the delivery of healthcare where the patient and the provider are separated by either time or distance. So that includes things like teleradiology and stored forward type modality. It includes email, text, video, and telephone. And I could talk for a while about all the ways we don't count that in our professional practice. And over this time, there's a variety of different things that have happened from 2010 to 2018. We've seen a wide number of virtual medical care services grow up. I'm not sure that this has got teamed on it actually, because it might be a slightly older one. Oh no, there they are down here. And what you can't see behind this little piece here is a little remote Segway we had, which we were using in Thames Hospital to power, just guided by a mobile phone to go and do ward rounds. And for those of you who may also remember all the noise about Smart Health, there was a Smart Health application that we ran at Waikato Hospital. These are the units that we've spread throughout Waikato, which are portable devices that we've been using for stroke assessment. And now I'm with Whakarangarau, and these are the lines that we're delivering through Whakarangarau. So they include the COVID-19 lines, obviously, poisons line, GP after hours, and a variety of other lines. And then, of course, everything changed with COVID. These are my parents, and this is me, not really giving any clinical advice because that wouldn't be ethical, hey? But I think it's a good demonstration of how many folk moved over to video with the advent of COVID. In fact, my dad, who's under the care of the oncologist, was most cross because his oncologist continues to phone him and not use video. But when we had a look at what was actually happening in the video consultations, in DHBs, you can see here that pre-lockdown, there were only about 7 video consultations on a weekly average. That's up to 280 now. And you can sort of see this going right the way through the post-lockdown lockdown period. 16 DHBs are now delivering video consultations. I'm sure that's more actually. And it's dropped down to 870 from what we were seeing as a weekly average of 2,000. And this was before the last lockdown. Auckland, I guess, doesn't count. And I'm almost done, but I'm just looking now at national possibilities, which is the sort of stuff that we've been looking at from a telehealth forum perspective. And our sense is that it's time really to look at how we can get rid of postcode lottery. We're about to have a single national employer. We theoretically are going to get a shared available patient record through HERA. We've got the compatible technology. We've got national booking capabilities. And this should be the birth of a shared nationwide roster, in our opinion. So then you've got a patient anywhere and a specialist elsewhere. And you can bridge these gaps between community-based care, inpatient care and outpatient care, and escalate to referral and intervention. And one of the things that we do know about delivering care directly to patients is that patients really enjoy it. It saves them time, it saves them money, it makes them feel as if they can bring their whole whānau in the journey with them. What we also know is that the thought's been around for a long time, This is a 1954 cartoon, which I think is quite fun. And it would be a great shame, I think, to waste this pandemic and not move on with all of our digital tools. So there you go, that's my little presentation. I feel like I'm on those TV shows where you go, what's that? Was it 7 Sharp or something? Where you go, this is my picture.
Cool. Thanks so much, Ruth. That was really brilliant. So let's just see if there's any questions in the room to start with, and I'll try and repeat them. Here we go, Michael. Maybe
Yes,
I'll just let you.
Exciting. I'll see if you can hear me. I'm Michael Schulz, one of the gastroenterologists here in the hospital. It's exciting to see that you've gone that far ahead with teleconsultation. Is that backed up with other electronic services like electronic prescribing, electronic blood test requests and things like that, because that's something that probably needs to follow in its footsteps or needs to already be there.
Yeah, totally. So I can tell you, in fact, Lisa here can probably tell you, I got very excited today when I did my first e-prescription in the COVID community world. So yeah, you know, e-prescribing has to be part of that, e-test ordering has to be part of that. And it's been quite interesting for me actually, because I'm now working for Middlemore DHB, so I've moved from Waikato, and the difference between the different DHBs and what you can, you know, what's available is quite startling. You know, every time I move to a different DHB, I'm amazed about how different we all are with the same bits, if you like. And these sort of things are absolutely crucial to being able to deliver a good service by telehealth. I should be clear though that in Whakarangaro, all of our consultations are by telephone, and there's actually good reason for that. And part of that is because there's an equity gap here, right? So if we were to actually go and say let's all do video, then we're immediately going to skew towards people who can afford it. You know, have got data on the phone, have got access to the devices that work. And whilst I would love to be able to provide all of those bits now, I think if you can't provide those bits, so if you can't actually go into a whānau and say, here's your iPad or whatever else devices, here's your data, then I guess, you know, rightly or wrongly, we just do the same thing for everybody, which is pick up the telephone. It's not ideal, and I'd like to be able to move more towards video, but that's the way it is right now.
Thank you.
Thanks. Does anyone else in the room have any questions? Nope. Okay, great. So thanks so much, Ruth. Can you see any questions coming through on your chat? Maybe people might want to chat with you on the chat, but I know that you have to go as well. So I just want to say thank you very much for joining us today. It's been really brilliant, and I'm glad the technology worked to bring you in, which just shows that, you know, it all works now. This kind of thing would never have worked a few years ago, and it's yeah, quite a good example.
Yeah, maybe even only 12 months ago, right? I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
We're all so much better, aren't we, at finding the right buttons, and whether it's Zoom or Teams or whatever it is, this is just becoming the natural way we do things. I mean, it doesn't replace in person. You know, I think in person is still important, but to be able to still do these sort of things is like gold, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so let's move on. So I think we've got Damon somewhere. Ah, there we go. Okay, so Damon's going to be filling in for two people, I believe. So Nathan and Lance. So let me give you this.
Thank you. Oh yeah, you could put them. I'll start off with the New Zealand hospital stuff and first day. So we'll do the slides in a minute.
Have you got slides for the hospital stuff?
No, no. Yeah. Hi. So a lot of you, some of you know me. I'm Damon Thompson. I'm an anaesthetist here at Dunedin Hospital, and for the last couple of years, I've also had a role providing clinical IT input to the New Dunedin Hospital digital planning side of things. So Lance was scheduled to talk, but I'll just give a few, probably about 5 minutes to update you on that on his behalf. So the New Dunedin Hospital, obviously it's going to be the biggest building project in town, but it also has to come with a digital component. So the digital component is going to have an element that's focused on the physical build, but also an element that facilitates the Southern Health system in general. So the physical build, to start with, there's going to be a whole lot of wires and cables and infrastructure that has to go into it. As well as that, we are having to make the new hospital paper light or paperless. So the vision is that the outpatients building will be paper light and the inpatients will be paperless, as the goal. And part of the reason for that is that there's no physical space being designed in the building for paper. So that's not just the basement notes storage for old notes, but it's also on the wards for the inpatient notes, for the clinics. You can't have volumes of old notes coming to clinics. You can't have lots of storage pigeonholes for blank forms for lots of different pathways in your clinics, in your pre-op clinics, for example. So all of that will have to be digitized. And probably there'll be a transition. So the outpatients building will have begun the journey, and that won't be completed until the inpatients building comes online. But what's probably more interesting, and the other benefit of digitizing is that if we do it right and have the right people involved, we've got the opportunity to make things more efficient, more safe, more effective for our patients and staff and their families as well. And then in addition to that, we get all the data. So it can be the clinical data that helps us understand what we're doing and where we're effective at it, and makes us much better at doing audits and refining what we do. So what's probably more interesting to a lot of people than the actual what we need to do for the hospital building is what we need to do to enhance the Southern health system. So there's been a lot of talk in the media about the size of the hospital, and is it going to be big enough, and is it smaller than the current hospital for bed numbers, or is it bigger, or maybe it is the same, but then our need will grow. But basically the assumption of the hospital design is that we'll become more efficient in what we do, and that we won't need as many physical beds or as many clinic rooms as we would if we carried on doing things the way that we're doing them now. Now, you may argue that that's a failure in design of the hospital, but you could also see it as an opportunity that actually we do need to do things differently, and we do have to be able to do things in a way that don't require so many people to come into that physical building. And so a big part of the strategic planning for the digital systems is to build the foundations that allow us to develop those new models of care that allow us to interact with patients outside of the physical building more. Now, digital itself won't be designing all those models of care, but we need to deliver the tools that the different services can then use to design those models of care to interact with their patients in the way that suits the patients and their service the best. So that will involve, for some services, it will involve improving the continuity of care between primary and secondary and the patients, and the information flow between all of those things, and the patients far now and significant others who they want to invite to share their record. So that then becomes a bit more complicated, because it's not just, when we're saying primary, it's not just general practitioners and hospital, it's that whole spectrum of clinical care that happens in the community. It could be aged residential care, it could be allied health visits in the community, it could be all sorts of things that need to all be interacting in a way that they're currently not able to at the moment. So we're looking at how we can build the foundations to allow that interaction to happen in the future. And it's not going to be a big bang where it suddenly happens, but if we get the foundations right, then the system can grow to allow that. So to do that, we've got an opportunity here in Dunedin that's a little bit different to the rest of the country at the moment, because we're having to spend a lot of money on digital for the new hospital. And so we have the opportunity for some of that funding to be used for almost like a pilot for the rest of the country of not, the rest of the country is also doing things as well, but we've got an opportunity to lead the way in some areas as well. So when we do that, we'll also be interacting with not just the southern region, but the South Island region, because we've also got partnerships with the other South Island hospitals through the alliances that we've currently got, but then also now more so with Health New Zealand, and Ruth mentioned HERA as well, the what was formerly called the National Health Information Platform. So we'll be doing that in conjunction with thinking about how the whole future ecosystem is going to develop. So in terms of the timeline for the digital planning, the business case is slightly out of cycle with the physical build. So we're currently at the moment finalizing the detailed business case for the digital spend. So that includes, a lot of that includes the physical infrastructure for the hospital, but also these more wider goals. And once that gets signed off, which we're hoping will be early next year, we'll be able to start detailing the requirements a bit more and moving towards going to market. and which we're hoping will be later next year, and then the implementation, which will be the really exciting bit. So that's a brief whiz through of where we're at. Are there any questions or comments on that?
Question, what's the timeline for this work?
Well, the timeline has to fit in with the construction of the New Dunedin Hospital. So the outpatients building, we used to say is 5 years, but we've been saying that for the last couple of years, so it's probably 4 years now. The inpatients is about 8, or if you look at the website, you'll be able to see a date, but give or take delays, it's about 8 or 9 years away for the inpatients move in. So in terms of that imposes certain lockout windows, because we can't do any major changes in terms of hospital-based stuff for the last 6 months or so before we move in, because a lot of that lead-in time's then just the configuration of the actual IT stuff. So in terms of like major changes, we'd need to have that finished beforehand. So anything that we don't get done before the 6 months before we move into the outpatients, for example, we'll have to then wait for that next step. So at the moment, we haven't planned exactly which bits of transformation will get done before that outpatients, and which will have to get put off until in between times. And then in terms of what happens after the move into the new hospital, well, that's still 8 years away. So, I personally expect that this is an ongoing thing, that there'll never be a set end date, that will continue to evolve. But the actual, New Dunedin Hospital project itself will have to have an end date, and then it will transition into some other thing eventually. Yeah.
Is the hospital looking at any model for digital health, centers and
yeah, so we are very interested to see what other places are doing, and so back before COVID hit, which is a bit over 2 years ago now, Lance and myself and Mike Collins, who was had the IT lead role at the time, went over to the UK as well as a few others actually from around New Zealand, and we had a trip around there to see the environment that they're doing. The interesting thing about the UK is that it's a more similar ecosystem to what we're expecting to have in New Zealand than perhaps some other markets like North America, because we're moving towards a more open data sharing type arrangement with I could talk more about that, but we don't really have time tonight. But yes, so we're interested in that. We're also been talking to places in Australia about what they've done, and we're also in touch with people from around New Zealand to hear how things are going. And we have regular meetings with people from the Ministry of Health on who are keeping an eye on it as well. Now they're quite interested to see what comes out of Dunedin, to see if we can then apply it to other places too.
My concern is that currently it's really difficult to get small projects done that would significantly make life easier and make digital work easier and get done presently, because there's just not the resource in the hospital to do it, and there's no funding to do it. How's that going to be better with the digital hospital?
Yeah, I completely sympathise with that, and that's sort of one of the things that led me to keep asking questions and end up getting the role that I've got. And I haven't well, I haven't solved that for the short term, because we still have those challenges. I think one of the challenges from some of those projects, like smaller projects, for example, there's a whole variety of reasons why I think that's not working at the moment. And I could talk for a while on that as well, but I'm happy to talk about that afterwards informally. But one of the reasons is that a lot of the stuff that we've got at the moment is on systems that is hard to change. It's not efficient to change. It might require a software specialist in that particular type of programming, that particular app that services uses, and they've got 100 of those to maintain, and there's only maybe a couple of those people in the DHB that can make changes to that system. So, that's one example of why those things are difficult. Whereas if you had a newer system that was driving everything, it would be done in a way that a greater variety of skill sets of people were able to change it, and we could have a more flexible system. There's other challenges as well, but I'll have a chat with you afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of questions. So the first one is relates to the point that Bruce was making around capacity to deliver from one area or multiple areas around the country to the rest of the country. And we've got a hospital being built here, and I'm hearing you say the Ministry of Health. It's going to be interesting to see how it develops. We've got Health NZ coming in, so I'm just sort of interested in the interplay between those various different factors, I guess, and how that's being managed. It seems as though it could easily become a really lost opportunity. We seem to be developing this ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it's not being seen as a part of a broader.
Well, it is. Yeah, I think we don't really know what's going to happen with Health NZ, I guess, is the short answer. The strong message that we're getting from Shane Hunter and other people in the ministry is that they don't want us to just sit and do nothing while we're waiting to find out what the answer is going to be from Health NZ. And because in reality, Health NZ is going to be all of us again anyway, just wearing different badges. So there probably will be some more centralized direction on a lot of things, but they, yeah, so I don't have a clear answer, but we're being encouraged to not wait for Health NZ, and we just have to keep the discussions going between us and the central ministry and Health NZ as it actually comes on board to make sure that we're not missing out on those opportunities.
I'm a bit worried because as a sometime historian of this area, one of the custom these days, so it harkens back to, I guess, what's been going on for about 30 years in terms of the national and the local planning.
Yeah.
Now, just another question too, that's around the development process, which someone was raising. There was resources coming from it with a polytech and a university, quite a lot of resource, training up programmers, lots of students, lots of academic staff, student university across computer science and information science, and there's nothing like demand pull, which if you throw out potential here to get people involved, there could be money attached to it, people will probably come to the party.
So there will certainly be need for increased staff and digital over the next few years as this gets, first of all, as we move to the requirement phase, so they're looking at expanding it early next year for that, and then again, once we're actually getting to the implementation phase, there'll be another expansion as well. So yeah, there's other people that have got the details at their fingertips. So there's a draft plan of what different types of numbers of different types of roles will be needed, and that's not at the forefront of my mind at the moment. But yeah, if you keep in touch with people like Alance and Carl, and now Patrick Ing, who's come on board as the digital lead, they'll be able to share some of that with you in due course.
Okay, Michael?
Yeah. With digital health, do you think there will also be a greater use of big data then? I mean, if we bring this up here in Dunedin and we then get everything digitalized, that's a good fund for audits and research and things like that. But I think New Zealand is small enough to just have one big database, and that's where we struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. So
to then can we compare our work with Auckland's work or patient outcomes and things like that? And
yeah.
Just repeat the question, just because the.
Okay, yeah, so the question was about what the opportunity is for big data, and whether we want to be just doing it in Dunedin Hospital, or since New Zealand's not that big, we should be collecting the data nationally, and then we can do audits and things on it. So I think there'll be a combination of both. The challenge is if you the challenge between doing something locally versus regionally or nationally is you can be more nimble and flexible if you do it locally, but then you don't have the scalability of doing it nationally. And if you do it nationally the wrong way, you get people that don't understand the local situations defining what you should be doing. So there's obviously a trade-off for all of those things. And in terms of the data, you'd have to have if you're doing it nationally, you'd have to have some national understanding of how to structure that data, making sure you're getting the right data definitions so that it's actually valid and measured the same way across the whole country. And I think obviously HERA is the National Health Information Platform, which is now called HERA, is going to be the first step in setting those standards. If you look at what they're going to be doing over the next few years, it's fairly modest to start with, and it has to be, because if they tried to do everything all at once, they'd fail. So in terms of the data elements defined in HERA, it's not going to give us all of those answers for all of our specialties straight away, but it hopefully will be a platform which we can then build on.
But the pull needs to come from top down, I think. I mean, it's possible. You see it with the bowel cancer screening. I can look up results from Auckland Hospital, what they do, and they can look up what we can do. So I think if there's a will, there will be a way to make that happen.
Yeah, and it, like you say with bowel cancer, it will happen for those areas that have the greatest benefit from that first. And so, yeah, I think it's important that we do keep in touch with that. In terms of the clinical systems, that flows on, because the audit, if you're looking using the ideal from a clinician's perspective is that all of that data gets collected as part of the routine care and of the patient in terms of you're entering your medical records. The ideal is that you don't have to write your notes and then go to another system and then do all your data entry to the national audit system. You want that to be automatically pulled from the notes that you write, so you don't have to do it a second time. So the challenge is to make sure you structure whatever system receives those notes in a way that can then pull the right data to the right systems.
Great, thanks very much, Nick. So I think probably what we'll do, just because it's been just a bit over an hour, if anyone needs to have a break. So the idea originally was that we would have an hour of talks, and then we'd go out and have drinks and nibbles and things like that. And 2 hours of talk is going to be a bit too much. So I think, should we just mention the eHealth forum?
Yeah, I could just talk through it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, so we'll just do that, and then, whoops, what am I trying to do here? So why can't I? That seems a bit annoying. Share screen.
Was on a Google?
No, we got it on the desktop.
Okay.
So if you just go to files.
Yeah, desktop. Come on, yeah.
Just make sure we're sharing the screen.
Yeah.
Okay, they can see it now.
All right, so I'll just talk briefly about the eHealth forum. Now, some of you may be aware of this already and may be using it already. So this was a presentation due to be given by a colleague of mine, Nathan Kershaw, who's another anaesthetist. So this was to tell you about the eHealth forum and why you should jump in. So this is just a bit about Nathan. He is an anaesthetist, clinical informatician. He's been working at Southern DHB on and off in the past. He's got a Master of Health Science from the University of Auckland in informatics. And he's now on the HINS board and has also helped set up or been instrumental in setting up the Kiln eHealth forum. So in terms of how, so the benefit of the eHealth Forum is that it helps connect people. So we were talking about how do we stay in touch with people from around the country and around other places and on what they're doing. So there's different ways we can do that. So traditionally we go to conferences and see people in person. Obviously haven't been doing a lot of that lately. That's great for building relationships with people. But then when we want to continue the conversation between conferences, there's space for some other type of conversation. Now, sometimes people use social media for that. And some of the issues that so you may have Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups or follow people on LinkedIn or Twitter about things, and that has some great advantages of being able to hear about things that have gone on or share links with interesting things. I've certainly found out some useful information from that. There are some limitations of that type of interaction. One is that they're usually proprietary systems, so they're products that companies are peddling because they make money off them in other ways. So it doesn't necessarily suit the purposes that you want for a platform like this. They are at the mercy of the companies that run them in terms of how they're structured and how you can search for information on them and whether they'll suddenly just turn them off and then you've lost all your data of those conversations or the information that's been shared on them. And there's been issues with Yammer on that. So eHealth Forum is set up on an open source platform, which is the discourse platform, which mirrors the traditional bulletin board style messaging system. But the data is, because it's open source, the data is of those conversations and the history of those conversations is all there, and it's not going to be taken away from people, and it's done in a way that's more easily searchable. So if you think, oh, I wonder what, if anyone's talked about, say, for example, I posted on it about how clinicians can share clinical photos in a secure manner, and you can search that and see what conversations there are, and different people from around the country have said, well, in our DHB we do this, and in our DHB we do that, and these are some challenges that we found out about it. So it was good for a slightly more in-depth discussion than, say, what you might get over LinkedIn. There's currently two ways you can post on it. One is in the slightly more private forum, which is only visible to members. So membership is open to now this is where we need Nathan to tell us exactly the rules, but it's basically people with a role, recognised role in as a clinician or as an IT person. And then there's another more open section of the forum that anyone can read. So
I can answer that, Damon.
Yeah,
it's open to anybody. It's open to anybody who's a clinician practicing or not with an interest in digital health. So you don't actually have to have any particular formal role at all. And you just need to be a clinician with an interest.
Thanks for that, Ruth. And so personally, I've found it useful for as I discussed when I was thinking, well, we've got this need in our DHB, I wonder what everyone else is doing, and we've had quite a lot of interesting discussion on that. Similarly, I've talked to people who are more on the technical IT side who have found it interesting to broaden their understanding about how different systems are used in different places. So I'd encourage you, if you're not already, to scan the QR code and sign up. And Nathan's provided some chocolates for anyone who signs up tonight. And I'm going to, he had a scheme where he was going to put the page of the discourse forum up, and we could see who'd signed up, and then you'd get the chocolate. But I'm going to rely on an honesty system, so I'll leave the chocolates on the front bench and you can take one as you go. Any questions or comments on that before we break?
I'll just make a comment. It's really worth signing up, I'd say. There's lots of, quite often you sign up for these things and there's not much discussion going on, but there's lots of active discussion from quite senior and interesting people who've got kind of answers to questions, so it's definitely worthwhile. And Nathan as well is doing a really fantastic job with kind of making it work, which I think is really the critical aspect to it, isn't it? Mm. Yeah.
And it does come in waves. Like sometimes it'll be more noisy than others on the forum. But when you do sign up, you can download an app on your phone, and you can have it set so that it alerts you or not, depending on your preferences, when new posts are made on topics and things like that.
Great. Okay, thanks very much. So we did just want to make sure that we could have questions from here and from Zoom, and there was just one question on Zoom. So if anyone has got a question on Zoom, do you want to just unmute yourself and ask your question? So Anna Rudder, do you want to ask your question? Sorry about that. Anna Rudder, do you want to ask your question now? Oh, no. Okay, I think we might have lost him. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for all the speakers. If anyone wants to have any more discussions, I think we'll just take it offline. Maybe you can have a chat now, and if you want to catch up with anybody. Thanks very much, Ruth. And thanks for everyone for joining online. We have recorded this session, so we'll be sending that out to everyone who was expressed an interest in the earlier session, but maybe the lack of drinks and booze kind of persuaded people not to turn up today. But next time we'll be trying to have an informal networking session as well next time. Hopefully COVID will be gone at some point in the next 5 years. But thanks very much, everyone, and we'll close it there. Yes, Martin, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment.
Yep.
I haven't heard anything about the use of mobile technology specifically in this area, and I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
And also digital health, a lot of the focus is on centralization of information and then distributing it out to people via the cloud. But there was a brief reference to the idea that local practice of medicine is very important, and I would like to know if there's any interest in that in the future too. So mobile technology and the decentralization of health via digital means are two areas that I would like to hear more about in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a really great topic, and I think that's something that we'll try and bring someone in for a future one of these meetings to discuss. I know that there's a huge amount of work that's been going on in that area, and I know Nigel Miller in particular has talked to our students about how do you use digital to take things out into the community and to better connect people, and I think mobile technology is definitely a big part of that. So yeah, so hopefully we'll have some more, we'll talk to people. If anyone in here wants to give kind of a 10-minute overview of the work that you're doing for the next meeting, just let me know, and I might shoulder tap a few people. And also people listening to the recording or who are currently on the Zoom session want to give a talk via Zoom, that's great as well, to bring in people from places outside Dunedin. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. And just want to say thank you to Hannah as well for organising it and sending out all the emails and rescheduling things. Okay, cheers then, everyone. Chocolates.